Okay, so today we are going to talk about my version of the family law business model and introduce you all to a few simple ideas that will teach you how to save money and get on the right track for winning your freedom back. Sounds great, right? So the things that I'm going to talk about today have literally saved lives, and all it might take in your case is a mindset shift to set things right again in your life. I know that when I understood the big picture of everything that was going on, it became easier for me to figure out what I needed to do to accomplish my goals. So I'm glad you're here with me today. I'm going to make this quick. I won't be on here long, but I'm going to tell you what, once I understood what was going on in the family court process, I was able to make better decisions that needed to be made, and they were so much easier to make. So I'm going to help all of you with that today. Some people might think that this is just about narcissists and protective parents, and it's not. It's actually bigger than that. That's just one piece of the puzzle. And it may be an extremely significant piece of the puzzle for you. I know I had a pathological liar that I had to deal with, but you know what? I really hate the labels simply because the more labels you put on things, the more they're going to cost you in the family court process, all right? So it certainly complicates things, and we're going to try to simplify things for you here today. The family court business model is actually so much more complicated, but when you break it down to what you're dealing with, it becomes simple. So we're going to talk about just a couple variations. There might be a lot of different variations, and that's what I help with, is helping parents figure out what variation they're dealing with so they can apply the right solutions. So it's really more like a recipe than it is a formula. You combine, like when you're baking and you combine ingredients, it's all about how you combine them. That's what determines what you get, right? That determines your result. So cooking is chemistry, and we're not going to get into that. That is something that is one of my loves. I was going to school to be a biochemist when I went through my divorce, and of course all of that was shot to hell. There's no way I could continue to do labs that required me to go there in the middle of the night and still be able to navigate the process and keep rights and time with my children. So if you've ever wondered if you've ever wondered like how to get results in your case, and you've gone to attorneys and you're just not getting what you need, well, it's probably because you don't understand the recipe that you need. So I'm going to give you some simple steps that you can take to simplify the process for you. So what will you understand by the end of this video? That you don't have to be liked to keep your rights to your children. You don't even have to please the judge. I remember when I the first time I realized this, I told the opposing counsel that, you know what, I don't care if you like me or not. His jaw hit the floor. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that he couldn't intimidate me anymore. That's what's going to happen for you when you learn these simple steps, okay? Excuse the hair. So you're also going to learn that you are the expert in your own life. You don't need to hire a bunch of experts to tell you how to live your life, right? You just need some relief. And you don't need to hire a bunch of experts to tell you how to raise your child in your life. So you're going to learn about how to go about this so that you don't get those things imposed on you. So you decide what's best for your child, and no matter how much you try to do things their way, it's never going to produce the results you want. Okay, that's their recipe. We're going to teach you how to come up with your own. But there is something that protects you, and it's an often forgotten about ingredient. So when you're putting your recipes together, if you forget an ingredient, that can be pretty devastating. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But if you forget flour when you're making a cake or even gumbo, right? We all know what happens. It's flat or it's too liquidy. It's not digestible. It tastes horrible. And the rest of the ingredients might not even hold together. That's the way family law is. It's like a recipe, and once you learn the right one to follow, the end result will be so much better. So picture it this way. If you want to make gumbo etouffee, right, you need, and I don't know if I say that right, that's one of my husband's home town. That's what they're big on. That's what they make is gumbo etouffee. He eats a different variation of gumbo, but I remember every time we were cooking it, how he talks about the smell reminds him of home. But if you don't put the right combination of ingredients in there, you don't get that same aroma, right? And he always knew when he tasted it or he smelled it cooking, he knew immediately if something was missing. He just didn't know what it was. And that might be the boat that all of you guys are in right now. So let's go back to this example. So family law is like a recipe, and if you are, let's say, sorry, let me adjust this real quick. Let's say that you want to get more time with your kids, right? You want equal time. So what they're going to do is they're going to line up a bunch of people, experts, court-appointed experts, that they're going to start suggesting for you to hire. It's kind of like walking down the aisle of a supermarket where you're shopping for all of the spices, and instead of having brand names like Lowry's or no brand like Equate, depending on your resources, how much money you have, might decide for you which one you choose. Now you're choosing between which guardian ad litem or which parenting facilitator, and maybe even which attorney, sorry about that, maybe even which attorney you're going to use. And it's all dependent on how much money you have as to what you get to put into that recipe. So keep that in mind. We're going to picture that like a supermarket, okay? The problem with this is that someone else is choosing the ingredients for you, aren't they? And they're not even telling you what recipe they're operating off of. So you and your ex each have a pot, and your attorney's choosing the ingredients that go into this pot, and they're limiting your choices for you for what ingredients you can put in there. So the problem is, again, they're leaving out the flour, but you don't know this yet. Okay, so your ex has a cook, you have a cook, and the judge is the chief chef. And we all know what happens when you have too many cooks in the kitchen. You end up with a disaster, and disasters are very expensive to clean up. But it's very empowering and liberating once you realize what is happening. Once you realize it's not your fault, and once you realize what's happening, and that the courts have a business model that thrives on two parents who don't know what they're doing, and who are willing to let someone else do the shopping and the cooking for them, then you can start to make your life better and change your result once you realize this. You can win your child rights back. You can get a better child custody result. So when we say win child custody, we're not saying you're taking them from the other parent. We're saying you are going to get a win that is fair, that doesn't cost you your entire life savings and all of your resources, and that doesn't create more stress in your life, okay? So first, I don't think I introduced myself, so let me tell you guys a little bit about who I am. I'm Sherry Palmer. I co-founded Fixed Family Courts with Ron Palmer, and we've published books, Not in the Child's Best Interest, Protecting Parent-Child Bonds, and Oath Breakers. We've helped parents get out of jail, protect their children, identify the ingredients necessary in their case, put together the recipe they need to be effective and get good results. We've helped people conserve their resources, identify what resources they do or don't have by giving them the big picture, spend less money. basically, and achieve better results. Ultimately, both you and your ex, like I said, can win child custody, but your attorneys probably aren't telling you that. So, and some of you might be advocates on here, right, that are helping other parents, and they want to learn to do this in a better way because they find that they're getting frustrated too. So we help you guys with your recipe as well. And so to do all of this, to get good results, to change the family court system, you all need a plan, a system, and education to do that. To help others, you need the same. So by now, you all know that this is a horrible process and system and that you need a better plan, right? So we travel all over the United States. We see these results all over the place. We help parents just like you. So if you're going through this and you're getting horrible results, make a comment down there so I know who you are. So I know that you can hear me, for one. I should have probably checked earlier. But put down there if you've experienced this or if you're helping other parents. So by now, you know that it's true that the family courts they take two parents who have successful careers, they're healthy, they're thriving, and they make them broke and sick, right? I've known family law attorneys quit practicing family law because it got too stressful and they couldn't handle what happened to them themselves. The stress is that intense. It has destroyed careers. And the length of time that the stress lasts, it creates the perfect conditions for PTSD, depression, even suicide. So I had attorneys tell me that judges know that in divorce, they're seeing good people at their worst. So what they don't tell you is that it's the attorneys perpetuating a destructive family law process that is making the parents act this way. It doesn't take them long before they tear you down to fit their ideas and their beliefs, right? I know some of you have experienced that as well. After that first hearing, you start losing a lot of sleep, don't you? You start wondering, what good was it that I paid that giant retainer? Some of you might have only paid $1,500, which is still a lot of money, but I know people have paid $5,000 and $10,000 retainers. So you might be wondering, what good was this attorney? I don't feel like I got protected. And you're wondering what else you can do. What else will happen? What else can happen? If the attorney's not getting the results you want, who can, right? So you don't get much sleep, and you hope that maybe tomorrow might bring better results. Or maybe you're not sleeping because you hope tomorrow won't come, because the sooner you go to sleep, the sooner the next day comes, and then the doorbell might ring, and then you might get some mail. And I know people that it triggers their PTSD when those two things happen. Normal everyday occurrences become triggers for that anxiety and that stress that sorry, I just saw a comment on there. We'll go over those at the end, but that stress that you're experiencing becomes triggered by all kinds of things in life that you never expected. I used to have a hard time going to see movies because it would show families, right? It would show parents getting to parent their children, and even people in divorce. It would show like being happily divorced, and I couldn't understand why I didn't deserve the same thing, why my kids didn't deserve the same thing. So it would just trigger me. I'd have to leave the movie. I just finally stopped going to the movies. And that's assuming you can still afford movies. But that was kind of my brain break for a while, and I had to give that up because it triggered me too often. So you'll be wondering, when I'm going to get summoned to court again. What is going to happen next? What new allegations are they going to come up with? And sometimes you got to be immediately ready to mobilize, don't you? You might have, they could come up with some kind of false allegation and say there's an ex parte hearing in 2 hours, right? Most of the time it'll be the very next day, but either way, it doesn't give you hardly any time. You got to figure out how to take off work. You might have the kids you have to pick up that day. And by the way, your exes and their attorneys, they strategically plan these things to happen on your birthdays, to happen when it's your day to have your children, to make you miss more time, to stress you out so that you'll make more mistakes. So some waiting isn't working, okay? That's the bottom line. You keep waiting for the tide to turn, for things to get better. After about 6 to 12 months of going through this, losing sleep, not being able to eat, you start taking anxiety meds, getting depressed more. You're wondering how you're going to keep paying at this pace, right? You're probably maintaining 2 households. You're having to pay attorney. You might be having to pay multiple court-appointed experts, counselors, therapists, things like that. When is it going to end? There is no expiration on most temporary orders. So it's so important that you learn these things that I'm talking about today so that you can get this to resolve faster, so that it doesn't drive you into bankruptcy. So it's straining you, it's straining your resources to the breaking point. We want to help prevent that. That happens through education. And on top of all of this, when things get worse, you start getting told you need to hire more experts, right? Sorry. You start being told you need more experts. Maybe you need a guardian ad litem. Maybe you need an amicus if you don't already have those. Maybe a psychologist. Maybe they're going to start suggesting psych evals, because maybe you start complaining more. Hey, you're looking for answers. So you start assigning labels to the ex. Like, well, maybe they're a narcissist. Well, maybe they have bipolar disorder. I don't understand how anyone could possibly be this evil, right? There must be something wrong with them. You just won't accept that it is the way the process thrives, right? And the more you complain, the more ingredients you have to buy, and the more paychecks they make. And so you could also picture this as like they're lining up in the supermarket, right? Holding their hands out, waiting for their paychecks from you. And who benefits from this? Because it's not you and your children. It's not even really the ex, although they hang carrots out there in front of them. And I have to wonder, even if they get child support, if they paid $200,000, $500,000 to get this just to a final order the first time around, did they really make any money even off child support? So if you think about it, it's kind of like income redistribution, isn't it? Which we're not going to get into in this live. You can check us out and we can talk about other things like that later. So in other words, don't worry about that right now. We specialize in helping you figure out these ingredients. Find the ones that are right for you. They'll get you the results you want. So let's say the process started like this. You went to an attorney, you told them that you needed help either to get a divorce or because you were served a divorce. And so you're responding to those divorce papers. You told them you loved your children. You just wanted to make sure your ex couldn't follow through with taking your children away from you. This attorney might tell you it's simple. You just have to ask the judge for custody. But first, you have to pay a big fat retainer, right? And you have to do everything exactly the way they tell you to do it. Your ex also visits an attorney as well. That attorney says they'll take care of them, tells them what they want to hear, that you're a horrible person. So your attorneys are both commiserating with you, and they're becoming basically your support system, right? Your worldview becomes very narrowed because you only trust what they're telling you and what they're giving you. Because after all, they are the experts, right? So you're complaining that you have a different parenting style than the other parent has. You're panicking because your relationship is starting to change in this process. The more stress you're under, the more stress the kids are under. You're getting blamed for all of it. So you're just looking to that attorney to save you, right? I mean, so essentially you both become victims of the system. So you're resource that helps you get through this in your mind is the money that you can pay. So when you start to run out of money, you start to panic even further. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, don't panic, but also stop taking out loans for this. That's not going to help you. Okay, money is not what is going to help you. I can't say that enough times. And by the way, where else would you go pay money of that magnitude and not receive a contract that tells you, excuse me, the lights went off. Let me just turn those back on real quick. Somebody that was supposed to be managing my lights fell asleep on me. All right, coming back. So where were we? So you were never given a contract. You were never told what was in the business plan that you were buying, right? You were never told that you were going to employ 5, 10, 15 different people. You were never even asked if you could afford to do it this way, or told that there was any other way. Sorry about the hair, guys. We're on the road, and we just got a new truck, which is going to be our mobile office, and so we're pretty excited about that. But there's been a lot of setup that has to do with that. Picture when you move your entire house. That's kind of what we've been doing. So if you say things like you're dealing with a narcissist or bipolar or a person that has a personality disorder, what happens? Your retainer goes up, doesn't it? They start to say, oh my gosh, there's going to be a whole lot more interaction in this case. They know you're going to get stressed out. They know you're going to be messaging them constantly. They know that you and your ex are going to have a lot of interactions, whether it be text messaging, phone calls, whether it be in person, whether it be struggles during the child exchange time period. But if you go in there and you say, these are the issues I'm dealing with and I want you to save me from that, then the attorney knows it's going to get very complicated, and complicated is expensive. So that's why you need to learn to simplify it before you bring it to your attorney. If you've done that already, don't panic. You can still get yourself out. You can still bail yourself out of this. It just might take a few more extra steps. But if you're brand new in this, you have the opportunity to start this off right. Okay. So the attorneys know it's going to get complicated and expensive, but there is a better way. You can get through this. I did it. Mine, like I said, was a pathological liar. Either way, they both create chaos and expense if you do it their way. They know that if they paint a picture for you that says, I'm going to give you relief that you are saying you want, they're basically mirroring you that you'll pay and that you'll keep paying, because you just want to push it aside, right? You don't want to think about this. You just want to think, I have somebody who can be my savior and they're an expert in this field and I'm not, so I need to just do what they're telling me to do. Well, they thrive on having power over you. The more you react and respond, the more worth it is for them, the other side, because they know the more it's going to cost you. And your ex, by the way, they know how much money you have. They know that if they run you out of money, that they can achieve their goal, which is to keep causing you pain, because they might be in pain. Right? So many of them are extremely successful people. I want to cover that with you, because sometimes you might think, well, you know what? I've never been the real popular one in school, so if my attorney's going to expect me to go and win everybody over, that's not my forte. That wasn't really mine. That was my ex's. I mean, you guys might all think that, you know, I'm liked and everything else. And yeah, I mean, I generally was, but I wasn't a kiss ass, right? So I wasn't a person that was going to go in and just open my life up to them and say, here I am, open book, do what you want, and I'll tell you what you want. I felt my family life and my marriage was a privacy issue. I didn't feel I needed to tell them what problems I had in my marriage, because we were getting out of it. I thought we were going to raise our children equally together. So I didn't see any reason to air my dirty laundry. Now, a lot of you want to air your grievances in court. That is costing you money. So stop it. That's not the place to do that. And I wish the courts would act appropriately and realize their boundaries and not allow you to spend money on that there and go get help from someone else. Okay, and that someone else might be, you know, your church or professional counselors of your choosing, by the way, not somebody they order. You choose how you want to deal with your situations. If you keep asking them to choose for you, they're not going to be results you like. Parents who ask the courts to assign a counselor to them have very difficult times getting a different counselor when that counselor turns out to be biased or rude to them, or even put in charge of your time with your child. And the judge is like, well, you asked for that counselor, so you trusted them. Why can't I just, you know, appoint them to make all the decisions for you in your life? All right. So be careful how you're doing those things. You guys are stressed and you don't always realize that that's what's happening, but that is what's happening, is you are giving up your ability to make those choices in your life, right? They couldn't take them from you unless you give them up, because if they try to take them from you, there's a process they're supposed to follow. And like I said, we teach that in some other webinars and courses. So don't worry about being liked, okay? Let them act the way they act, and you just continue to be true to yourself and find the path that works for you. All right, they continue to act the way they do because it benefits them. And they'll typically get the upper hand on you, by the way, early on, but you can turn that around if you know how. And we'll get to that a little later. So after your first temporary orders hearing, where they made you an every other weekend parent, or as some parents call it, a Happy Meal parent or Disneyland parent, you get mad, right? You get mad that this is happening to you. You get mad at the other parent. You're hurt. You're desperate to get things to change. Your relationship with your children is getting more strained. You're becoming alienated. The kids are lashing out. The kids are starting to do the bidding for the other parent. And you couldn't believe that this is what happened. Now that's getting used against you, saying that your relationship is crap and now you need to hire another person, right? Don't go down that path. That anger you can actually convert. Your pain you can convert into effective action, okay? So even if that other parent has mental health issues, don't let your attorney run with that. That's usually their cue to take further advantage of you and your pain. And they start suggesting you need to employ some additional people, right? Yada, yada. We know the routine. That's pretty much their answer to everything. Let's find another expert. So your ex gets emboldened, they retaliate. So I'm explaining, if you go down that path with that lawyer and you say, well, what the heck, you know, I'm too busy, I'm working, go ahead and run with that mental health issue. I'm just going to go ahead and try it, right? And see how the results turn out. By the way, you guys might not get another chance. And we'll talk about that a little later too. So your ex might get mad that the other side filed a request for psych evals or a request for a child custody study. So now they might retaliate. Things get worse, and they might request supervised visitation or even start making allegations of child abuse against you, or maybe a new person you have in your life. They might say, oh, the step parent is touching my children inappropriately, and you thought your life was stressful and bad before. Wait until they accuse one of your stepchildren, right? And then say that you're now choosing between your stepchild and your child as to who you're going to believe when they make sexual abuse claims. Oh, it gets bad, you guys. That's why I'm saying don't take this path. So, and be aware of that too, everyone. If you do get into a new relationship or have stepchildren, you need to take some protective measures, because they become the fodder for the fire for the other side. We want you guys all to become the water. You're all going to be the buckets of water that put out these fires, right? You're going to come out of this flowing beautifully. Your life is going to be corrected. All you got to do is learn this. Just realize that you're reacting and that you guys are playing off of each other. Or as Monica calls it, I see she's here, the perfect marriage, right, Monica? I love that little description you gave about the narc and the victim role. And by the way, her model's not wrong. I'm just giving you guys a different way to look at this. We all learn differently. We all go to different people. Things resonate from different people for us, right? Something I say may not work for you as well as something she says or somebody else. So we want to make sure you guys all have different examples so everybody can get on the same page with their methods that they're using. So whether or not you come here in different ways, I'm going to show you that the solution is actually all the same, even if your recipe ingredients are different. So beware if you're in new relationships, beware how they're going to use that, okay? They've destroyed relationships before. So parents in conflict make everyone in the system a lot of money, okay? I think it's up over $62 billion. So I think it went up about 1.6% from the time that divorce court made their $50 billion calculations. About 1 million new people, parents, go through divorce every single year. That means that it doesn't mean there's a million children, but if every family had at least one child, and if you figure on average, it's statistically, you guys, there would be one child per couple, then you could say there's probably about 1 million children who are going through it, because some people have 2 children, 3, 4, 5, 6. So about 1 million children every year on average are going through this. And I think the calculations, I think, Monica, you were saying something like 22 million parents. Oh, actually it was erasingfamily.org who found that statistic that 22 million parents are erased from their children's lives each year through parental alienation. And that's what this system ultimately leads to. If you're not already alienated, which I know people like Lydia, I know you're alienated. That's what this ultimately leads to, is you end up becoming estranged from your child artificially. So in order to keep control and management of your case, you need to keep learning how to do that. And by the way, narcissistic behaviors are not all bad. You might wonder, how can so many people have these similar traits in these high conflict family court cases? That's because narcissism actually, not narcissism, but narcissistic type behaviors. I differentiate, because my daughter gets on me all the time. She's a PhD in psychology without a dissertation, and says that there's a difference between a narcissist diagnosis and narcissistic behaviors, right? We all have behaviors that come from a lot of different diagnoses, but it doesn't mean we actually have the condition. So I just want you to differentiate from that, because I think that's what probably frustrates so many of you, is that you pay a lot of money to try to prove somebody has a particular diagnosis, and you're not realizing that that's why your money might have been wasted. They might not actually have that diagnosis, just some of those traits or characteristics. Those have been very beneficial. They say some of the top people in business are actually narcissists, right? They call them narcissists, but they have those behaviors. That control and that drive to manage things benefits you in business, doesn't it? So trying to eliminate all those behaviors, trying to change that person, isn't the solution here. So all you know when you're going through this is that you're without your child, and you're willing to spend what it takes to bring your child back home. And one mom put it perfectly, and you guys might recognize this and know who she is. She said that what happens is, as victims, we start spending money also to get back into the court's good graces. So if we lose, excuse me, if we lose temporary custody of our kids, maybe you reduce every other weekend like her, or you're going to end up spending money to get back into the court's good graces. But you're going to get a therapist for your kid, because you think if what you're saying isn't enough, let you hire a therapist, where the therapist can say that the child should be around you. Or you might hire a psychological evaluator to examine yourself, and that person can tell the court that you're not crazy and you're a normal person. Or you might say, let you get a gal. This is quotes, kind of, I'm summarizing quotes from Monica. Let you get a gal so the gal can measure your backyard and look into your life and say that you're a good person. By the way, Monica, I was shocked when I heard that, because I never got a gal in my situation. I wouldn't have even thought of that one, to measure a backyard. How ridiculous is that, you guys? They have to come up with excuses to justify what they're charging you, right? They got to make it look like they're doing something official. That's just ridiculous. You're not even supposed to have poverty held against you. Excuse me 1 minute. You're not even supposed to have, poverty held against you, and they're not supposed to be able to use it to take your children away. But you see it every day in these, don't you? In these cases. So how many of you here have done all this, gotten a gal in amicus, and then they just made reports that made you feel horrible? If you've had that happen, put in the comments that yes, that's happened to you. So they're going to come up with absurd reasons to take your children. And most of you might understand how absurd they can get, but you never would have believed it if it hadn't happened to you, right? So think about trying to explain this to someone else, that you lost your kids because someone else in your family had an illness, or somebody who doesn't even live with you drinks, and they're afraid they might come over to your house when you have your kids, so you can't have custody and supervise. And Monica brought up another example in hers about a Indian woman, I think you said, that either had her family massacred or they all died from an illness, and she lost her children because of that. Now, how could you guess that any of this was going to be relevant in your situation? You can't. Again, that's just their way of saying, I'm trying to justify spending your money and make it sound good. And okay, so let's say you start telling your friends that this has happened to you. Do they believe you? Right? They either don't believe you, or they think you're making it up, because nothing like that could ever happen in court, because they think judges are fair still. They haven't been through it. So you're spending all of your energy telling your friends, telling other people, telling your family members, and then they start avoiding you. So even family members can't take the constant barrage of that negativity, that focus on what the courts are doing to you. In fact, you might even have friends unfriending you on Facebook because they say that's all you post about. That's all you talk about. It's family law, family court. We're tired of it. I probably have friends unfriending me now, right? Because I'm talking about it on my page instead of on my business page. But I wanted all of you to be able to see it and know that I'm here. Sometimes Facebook doesn't show everybody everything I'm putting on the business page. So you don't have people to go to in this, and you start relying more and more on those that are costing you money. And that's why you're getting loans. That's why family members are giving you loans, because they're thinking, my gosh, maybe if I pay for some of this for you, it'll get resolved and this will stop for you, because they feel bad. They want to help you. They just don't know how. So if this has happened to you, put a comment below. So guess what? You knew I was getting to this, the big lie, because our new book, Oathbreakers, it's all about lies you're told, and in our green book we have a whole section on myths that you're told. So the big lie, what's the big lie that they've sold to you? Any of you guys know? What have you bought? They made you think you had to be liked by all the people, your neighbors, and you paid for a lot of experts to show up in your case to say how wonderful of a parent you are. They made you think you had to be a wonderful, perfect parent. They made you think you couldn't have flaws. Oh my gosh, God forbid if you actually do have some anxiety and have to take medication, or actually did get so depressed that you wanted to take your life. They make you think, or you got injured in war and you have PTSD, they make you think that all of this means you shouldn't have your children, that you can't raise your children, right? So you've learned that you don't have to be liked. You don't need gals or judges and counselors validating you. Now, you're going to be dealing with statutes that say you do, but again, our systems teach you how to deal with that. So you think that you have to have good relationships with your relatives because they're going to use that as one of the factors against you. We're telling you you don't. You just have to know how to present this, right? You're going to learn to frame your case differently. So what if I told you that your rights didn't require you to be liked and that it's the state imposing this on you, so they can make money off of you? So they're putting you into that victim state so that you'll overlook the rights that protect you from this, right? Your attorney's going to try and discourage you from doing anything different than the traditional model they're using. They're going to tell you don't bring up anything that any advocates are telling you to do that's different than the way they do it. They're going to tell you not to use these steps that I'm going to tell you about because they don't require you to spend money on them and their buddies. Instead, they empower you and liberate you from letting them play you like a slot machine. So what'd you learn here? You don't have to be liked. You don't have to be without flaws. You don't even have to be a good person. We didn't go over that. But bad people become parents. Bad people exist in this world. Criminals get to see their children. There's a case that we use, Wolfchild. That parent actually burned their child and then got rights back to their child. Now, I'd probably, that makes me uncomfortable even, but I'm saying that's how strong your rights are. And I'm not saying that people who hurt their child physically should ever have their children, by the way. It doesn't mean I agree with these. I'm just telling you, there are some very bad people that still have rights to their children. They can own homes, they can become parents, they get to vote, unless they're felons. They own weapons, again, unless they're felons, or unless they have protective orders on them. But the point is that they get more rights than you do. And that's very frustrating for you. We don't want that to happen to you. So there are people losing their children believing that it's their fault, believing that if they had just gotten better grades, worked more or less, they had bought that other house a little closer to the other parent, they just chosen the other house with the bigger bedrooms, maybe if they just hadn't hooked up with the other person, or maybe if they get married. That happened in my situation. If they get married, they'll appear more stable, and then the judge will approve them. They don't know they don't need the judge's approval. They think this because the court puts these down as factors they use to evaluate your rights and your time with your children to decide who's going to get to keep the children. You get a list of reasons, right? So when the judge makes those temporary orders or your final order, you get a list of reasons why the judge decided the other parent would be the primary parent in your child's life. Right? You guys don't even know not to ask for a primary. Like, nobody even has to have primary, do you? So, and some of you may, because some of you are advocates. So I apologize. I'm not putting any of you down, but I'm just saying that you may not have even known that by asking for primary, you were stepping into a very abusive process. So now you might only be getting every other weekend with your child, and you're looking at the reasons that they put on there, and you're trying to correct those reasons because your attorney said just go ahead and deal with that. They might discourage you from appeal. They might say no, just go ahead and live with that, change your life, come back and modify. Right? I know some of you have done that. Some of you have believed that. You decided, well, okay, it's cheaper and faster for me to modify because appeals can take years, right? So you are put under the false belief that modification is easy. It's actually harder than the first time around and can be just as expensive, sometimes even more. So you think that if you just get a better job with more flexible hours, or you work more so you have more money, and if you dump that boyfriend the ex doesn't like, they'll be less irritated. Maybe you can get them into an agreement, or maybe they just will give you more time with the kids. But when that doesn't happen, you become very, very distraught, right? Because the lie consumes you. You end up in a death spiral that kills your career and sometimes your life. Right? And I mean ending life, but it does kill your life. It kills every dream you have because all you're focused on is how do I get this change? Because your children are the most important people in the world. They always say that a parent would take a bullet for a child. So of course they know you're going to spend money on this. You would give your life for that child. They know they can take advantage of you. So you should not feel like this is your fault. There are doctors and lawyers, corporate attorneys, there are family law attorneys that are losing their children in this. There are people who are just as perfect looking as the other parent losing their children in this. You could go to a judge and there could be a couple right before you where one person is like a mechanic and the other one is like a stripper by night, restaurant server by day, and all of a sudden, you know, the stripper gets primary custody of her child and gets more time than you do, who walked in there, who spent years of studying, getting your PhD. You could even be a psychologist. You go in there, your ex might be an attorney, or maybe they're an anesthesiologist, or, you know, we've seen all kinds of combinations, but you walk out of there with less time than you saw. And I'm not putting down strippers or anything like that, but I'm just saying, you know, society judges these careers. We put values on these careers. We put approval system on these careers. Like if we had a swipe on our phone where we could do how many stars we like someone as we pass by. If you guys have never seen Black Mirror, by the way, on Netflix, go watch that episode where everybody walks around and what they're allowed to get in life, it's their currency is based on how much people like them and how many stars they get. So you literally walk past them and you swipe, you know, 2 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars, and if your stars fall below a certain level, you get treated like a criminal, right? Like a villain. And that's what that's what you feel like. You feel like, well, wait, how did this happen? Because I made sure I made all kinds of good choices in life. Yeah, I have less time. Or you could have watched somebody who just got out of prison and they were given primary of their child. So that's very, very, very hard to take, and you shouldn't have to take that, actually. So what happens with all of this is your children are just as confused, right? They don't understand what's going on. You might have gag orders put on you, like Lydia's had, and your children just don't get all of the information to be able to really understand what has happened. So that stresses you out as well. So how long has all this been going on? Let's just cover that real quick. For hundreds of years, actually. Federal and state governments, and I'll give you an example, took Native American children from their parents and used to place them in institutions or with white families in efforts to get those children to act more like white families, right? So they used to force them to cover up who they were, just like they're doing that to you. So now your parental identity is being affected and your parental authority is affected. And you're no longer the person who you used to be. You might not even recognize yourself anymore. And our lights are going to go off again, so give me 1 second. And stay with us because we're getting to the good stuff here. Okay, push those buttons. This is how family court is, isn't it? It just keeps disrupting your life, trying to make you lose track of where you are. It's like the doorbell ringing. So one Native American woman said she and her baby sister sat in a tub of bleach to convince themselves they were getting more white so they could be liked by their white family. So these practices and policies, they left many of those children psychologically battered for the rest of their lives. This is what they're still doing now. They may not be using racism, right? But they're using things like, it's your fault that you can't get along with your ex. They want you to agree with your ex. Well, if you had just agreed and given in, you could have stayed in the marriage or and been suffocated, right? Some of you can't survive that anymore. Some of you, it's very, very abusive to you, whether it be emotionally, physically, or whether it just violate your values and beliefs with how you want to raise your children. Maybe you guys departed at some point and decided you want to raise them differently. You have the right to do that, but the courts aren't letting you. So it's not your fault that you can't get along with your ex. Really, the courts are pissed off that you won't give in to them and that you won't agree to go along with what they want to create as your recipe for your life and dictate your future to you. That's what they're pissed off about. That's why they keep costing you money. they're losing bonuses from the federal government, Title 4D. If they can't get you to pay child support and you know, then they're not paying for all those people that they've built up in that system, right? 2/3 of the Attorney General's office in Texas gets paid because of that Title 4D child support program. So they've got to create artificial situations. You might have been perfectly willing to support your children directly, have them in your own home so they could have two homes, but they create an artificial situation so that you have to pay them so they can get their bonuses from the federal government. If you had just given in, so don't regret not giving in, because if you had, then you know you might not have this opportunity to become who you've always wanted to become. You might have just stayed in the relationship and continued to live unhappy and feel suffocated like those Indian children. And I have one mom I talked to, and she told me that her children started getting bullied at school. This is when she was still in the marriage. This particular mom left the marriage. Your situation might be different. Maybe the ex filed on you. But her children were getting bullied. And she would ask herself, why aren't they standing up for themselves? Why are they letting themselves get bullied? Until she left her situation that was abusive, emotionally abusive. And it finally dawned on her. She was like, oh my God, my children were just copying me. They were doing the same thing I was doing. They were allowing bullies to bully them because I let myself get bullied. That was their example in their family, in their relationships. So her leaving actually was healthier for her and her children. Now, she is alienated right now, and she's working on that because, again, she doesn't get to communicate with the children what was happening. Her older children, who she does get to communicate with, are very supportive of her, as will her younger children be when she can get that communication through. Right now, they're angry because they don't understand why she left. So the reasoning for them to remove your children and separate them from their family back then might have been racism. Yours might be other reasons. Don't listen to any of them. You know what's best for you, your children, and your life. And once you realize the state's not going to rush in and protect you, you're going to stop being their victim. Once you realize your rights are what provide you protection and relief from abuse, once you realize your rights protect you from these ongoing escalating costs, you'll start saving money. I'll give you another example of how it feels when you know what to call the problem. I didn't know what the problem was in my situation. I didn't know why my relationships were changing with my kids. I knew, you know, I wasn't super close with my older one. I loved her. I love her very much, but she always had a difficult, you know, personality. We kind of clashed a little bit, but we're great now. But they're, you know, my younger ones, I was very bonded to, super close with, and even my relationships with them were getting bad. And I didn't understand what was happening or why that was. Ignore that phone. I'm supposed to be done with this. So once you realize what the name is for this and what is happening, you'll be so much better off. What was happening in my situation was parental alienation. And once I realized what that was, I then knew where to go to get the information, to get the help that I needed. Dr. Bone was one that I hired to teach my attorney. Now, it doesn't mean I had to go hire an expert to take over my life, right? We're all taught that experts know more than we do. They wear those suits and ties. They look nice. They have those labels behind their name. That doesn't mean they know more than you do in your life, okay? So it helped me plan my strategy by understanding. I stopped being dependent on attorneys, and I start saving a whole lot of money. I stopped being dependent on experts, and I knew when to use them and where, and I managed my situation. I spent 1 hour talking to Dr. Bone, then bought another hour for him to talk to my lawyer. He taught my lawyer what parental alienation was. We went into our next hearing with the lawyer with having that understanding. I didn't bring in a bunch of parental alienation experts either. And I won. So this can be done. And I was out of money too, by the way, you guys. So I remember how scary it was the first time that I stood up to the judge, or I decided to do something different than what my attorney wanted me to do. And the first time I stood up to my ex's attorney or had to interact with them. I know it's scary, but it is so worth it. You are worth it. Before court started, I remember telling my ex's attorney, all these things that I'm telling you, that I didn't have to be liked. It didn't matter what they thought of me. I could have flaws as long as I wasn't abusing my children, that I'm allowed to have my children. I basically let them know I was no longer an easy mark. So things got harder for them to bully me, to abuse me, and they stopped making money off of me. In fact, my ex started losing money, and so did his attorney, because now he had to start filing mandamuses and appeals on things. He got put in jail. He got jail orders twice. Once I figured this out, they just weren't able to beat me down anymore. So funny thing is, when you learn how to do this, you realize that it was the going along to get along that was actually giving them more power and making me more miserable. And so they may be appalled at you, and they may, try to put more pressure on you for a while, but as long as you stick with it, when you know you're right, you're right. I mean, I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but your rights are right and you're right when you use them. And once you know this, they can't shake you. Your foundation is strong. Right now, you don't have a foundation. Like I said, you don't have a business plan. You don't know what recipe you're using. How can you possibly get good results, right? You can't. That's like in business. If you don't plan something, you're not going to achieve it. You don't set a goal, you're not going to achieve it. So they preferred I work within the system and pay them to get my children on my side, do things their way, so I would spend more money on their buddies and have a codependent relationship with them. They want you to start changing your rules, parent different, so your children don't recognize you anymore. They want you to do things that are foreign to you, so that you're upset all the time and you need them, and your children are upset and your children need counseling. You and the children need therapists to calm you all down. One judge ordered a mother to not speak Spanish in her own home because the gal might not be able to communicate with her child. Absurd, right? That's what they do. They take over. They become the parents, not you. They start requiring you to run to a therapist with every little complaint or discomfort your children or your ex has. And then they default to those therapists. Now, your children lose that much needed authority that they had in their life from you. And I know you're panicked about that. You worry about that. But I'm going to tell you, my kids lost it for a while. It took me about 17 months to get my situation in my case turned around. And you know what? They're fine. Of course, there's effects from it, but it's not effects that they can't overcome. And of course, it does define some of their fabric and who they become, but you can use it to help them get stronger. So even if you're not seeing them, don't give up hope. They will come back around eventually. I see a lot of parents, say once they become adults, they move back in with them. Even parents who the courts said, oh, substantiated, you're abusive and all of this, and they get their kids back because they're not using proper due process to prove any of this. So don't believe these things unless the proper procedures were used and a conviction was made properly. Don't believe them. And, the more people you teach not to believe that, the easier you'll have as well, because you won't feel so bad. You won't think everybody's thinking horrible about you once they understand this. So that's for you advocates teaching others. So your children are off balance because you've had to change so much about yourself. And that's why I'm saying don't change yourself. You need to be true to yourself. The children are acting out and testing their boundaries and throwing fits because of that. I had my kids tell me, Mom, why are you so different? Of course I couldn't tell them. Oh, because they said, judge said I better dress different, or the attorney said I better dress different, or the judge won't like me. Oh, at one point they said, if you're pretty, you get treated worse, especially if you have a female judge who gets jealous. That could affect you. I had that happen to me in the first one. So being thin and pretty, I remember putting on weight to make sure I didn't get judged because of my looks, right? Like if you have a sexy body, they'll look at you and you might lose custody because of that. So they try to make you feel guilty so you don't know how to stop being dependent on the courts and them. You you keep asking for more orders, and those cost money. They order reunification therapy. They order co-parenting classes. Orders go all the way down to what times each of you can call each other and talk to each other or Skype on the phone. And when you can't get that phone call, what do? Spend more money to get another order to keep being dependent on the system. So do you see how they keep you in that cycle of dependency on spending money on them to ask for orders that make your life miserable and dysfunctional? You start blaming yourself for the stress your children are going through. You start hiring more counselors and experts. You get more anxious, more urgency sets in to resolve this conflict sooner, to get your children out of this vice grip. And when really, you're the one that's in the grips of the court. You've done everything they told you to do, right? You were told not to involve the children or upset them, but get an attorney to represent the children so that their wishes can be heard, and that and then they turn around and involve the children and blame you. So you change the hours you worked, we went over that, the job you do, the house you live in, all so you can impress these experts and satisfy them, and it still didn't work, right? So how is that working for any of you? Did that work for any of you? Write down in the comments, how does that work? I had one parent tell me this week that she thought the courts would just uphold her rights and wouldn't allow the other parent to ask for anything that violated her rights, and that they would go on and be happily divorced, right? Well, she didn't realize that this was done differently until she got our book. She said once she got our book, she found out that that was not the case, so she started preparing, and she's been getting better results since then. Another mom got gag orders put on her because she thought the family court process was fair and the judge was going to follow the law and uphold her and uphold their oath, right? But they didn't. She got our book, she read it, she did her own appeal pro se, and she prevailed at getting gag orders overturned. So we're all taught growing up to respect authority and that they know better than we do. We used to think that about doctors, right? There was a major shift in my life growing up, and that's when we all started getting taught to manage our own health and to start suggesting to doctors what we wanted done, what we thought was the problem. Before that, doctors were God, right? They had a crystal ball, and they were the only ones who could tell us what was wrong with us, and we had to run to them for every little thing that was wrong to have them fix it for us. And then we started learning that we needed to manage ourselves and our health better, because they're not there all the time, are they? They don't know us as well as we know ourselves. This is the same way. So don't let them decide whether your child should take ballet or martial arts, because you will pay them to do that. You will pay them to make those decisions. And the reason this is all happening and you're paying them is because you stopped being the expert in your own life. You stopped being the expert in your children's lives. You believed that all these experts were required. You weren't told how much they were going to cost. You weren't told that a gal was going to be able to invade every aspect of your life, were you? In fact, in Ohio, they have a doozy of a gal statute. You're not told that they can make the situations worse. You're not told that they can be given the authority to decide when you get more time with your kids. I have one father I'm working with, and we usually suggest you use some arguments that we help you learn to get rid of the gal. And in his situation, the gal's actually graduating him up for more time. That's not a position you want to be in, but now it's hard to get out of it because you're afraid to get rid of them because you're afraid you might not get more time if you do. So they become the gatekeeper between you and your children. They become very expensive. Their costs might be completely unlimited. You were never told that this gal was actually going to be like paying 2 attorneys. If you can hardly afford your attorney now, you certainly can't afford 2. You weren't told they're going to be at every hearing. They're going to be in every conference. They're going to be involved in every communication and email that you have that has to do with the court's process or any requests you make. you will pay them on top of your attorney. It becomes very expensive. They become part of the problem. So have you had a bad gal experience? Type a comment below, or just yes, let me know that has happened to you. So in Ohio, I wanted to tell you about that gal statute. You can't deny them anything, right? They can do and investigate whatever they want. They can interview anyone they want, ask for anything they want, and you're required to sign releases and sign the documents giving them consent. I remember a judge telling me one time, go in the other room and agree to child support with the other parent. And I said, oh no, you can order me to go in the other room, but you cannot order me to consent. But yet this statute in Ohio, and I'll tell you what it says. It says specifically, I've seen an order that says this: upon presentation of a copy of this order to any agency, hospital, organization, school, person, or office, including but not limited to the clerk of this court, human services agencies, public children's services agencies, private child placing agencies, pediatricians, psychiatrists, and the list goes on and on and on, the guardian ad litem shall be permitted to inspect and copy any records relating to the children without the consent of the children or the parent. And that the guardian ad litem shall have the authority to interview the children outside the presence of any counselor, caretaker, school official, custodian, or any individual who has physical custody of the children without the knowledge or consent of the children's parents. And the gal fees are treated like child support. So you can't even go bankrupt on them, but you can go to jail when you're not able to pay. So think about that for a minute. The judge is going to spend your money any way he chooses. The judge will spend money you don't have and create debts that can put you in jail. Nowhere else in life would you be allowed to run up a debt the way the family courts will run up bills for you and then put you in jail when you can't pay. Debtors' prisons were outlawed long ago. But once you understand this model, you realize this. You can stop the bleeding that you were lied to about. You'll understand they get to ask for these things because they make money on these requests. And the more help you need, the more they make. You'll learn how to flip the tables on them where they are paying more and you are not. Now they'll have to hire experts to try and counter and justify what they're doing. You no longer are the profitable slot machine who can be played. You no longer employ their minions or fund their racket. Now they have to pay to respond to the violation of your rights. I have another mom who said that when she learned her rights from our book, she was able to successfully do her own appeal pro se. There's been a couple of those. A dad did the same. Also one on, one of them was the children were put in a position to decide when they wanted to see their parent. They won on appeal. So once you learn these things, you are going to understand what you need to do, and it will be less scary, right? You'll have a process and a system. We have a plan that you can follow. So if you have been struggling because you don't have a plan or a process or an education, then type yes down there below that you want to be able to make this transformation. You want this information. Once you get this information, you will never go back to doing it the other way. You'll never go back to letting them abuse you. And as Monica said, transformation is a one-way valve, and I totally agree. When I went through it, there was pretty much no one else out there either. She was in the same situation as me. Pretty much it was family, father's rights groups, right? We didn't have Google groups, Facebook groups, Instagram, Twitter. We just didn't have all those groups, Google Docs, helping available to help us. We didn't have people sharing documents. They were humiliated. They were embarrassed. We didn't have people even willing to challenge best interests of the child. They were scared to do that. They were afraid that they were going to be considered like a child abuser. Oh my God, how can you go against what's best for your child? They didn't understand what best interest of the child really was. It wasn't until all of us got educated and started teaching others that this started changing and shifting. And as you can see, that can't go back either. Once you start change in a system, that doesn't go back either, as long as there are people to continue that education and fuel that narrative, right? So of course I've been discouraged not to do it. When I went through it, you guys will face the same thing. Parental alienation wasn't even as visible as it is now either. In fact, bringing it up was discouraged. Talking about your case in public was discouraged, and that still is too. Parents still go to jail for doing this, but they get out of jail and they get acquitted by juries when they do it now. So organizing with others used to be punished, and yeah, you can still get punished, but you are becoming more and more successful, aren't you? You might get villainized, but you can get that overturned. You might get treated like like you're abusive. Again, you'll know how to fight that. Even experts are speaking out against best interests of the child now, right? As being overbroad, as being undefined, right? Well, somebody had to start teaching about that. We started teaching about that in 2013, May of 2013, in our green book, Not in the Child's Best Interest. So you can benefit from that education too. Don't rely on others to just feed you parts of the education. You get the whole system yourself. You get the information and you use it the way it works for you. The more information you have, the more you'll have to source from. Okay, so this has changed because of parents just like you who learn their rights and refuse to give in and accept that slot machine business model. This entire business model in these family courts is a violation of your constitutional rights. It's plain and simple. Once you realize that you know to get educated on your rights, it's liberating, it's empowering. You're never going to go back to being a victim again, no matter how much they beat on you or try to punish you. You know that you have the power to resist all of their lies, all of their character assassinations. You know that these were just desperate attempts to get you to stay in the dark so that they wouldn't have to actually answer to their actions. Once you start learning your rights, your health will start to improve, just like mine did. When I didn't feel powerless or hopeless anymore, I started having more energy. I started feeling like I had a direction again, because all the things I used to do before, go to school, study biochemistry, run businesses, retail business. I had a bunch of my own businesses. I was an entrepreneur, business owner. All of that got destroyed. I felt directionless. Once I started learning this, I had a direction again. It filled that void. Voids are very dangerous, by the way. And Ron told me to remind all of you guys, or tell all of you, that sometimes you think that you being stressed and wanting to get away from the other person is the same thing that your children might want, right? So you're thinking, if you have a hard time dealing with that other parent, they're going to want to get away from them too. But they may actually be missing that other parent because maybe that parent hasn't been able to be as involved. And so when your perspective of that parent is different, because maybe they travel, and when they'd come home, they would actually feel like a disruption to you because they'd come in and disrupt like all the patterns and planning that you had. Maybe that's what broke your marriage up. That's a lot of what happened in mine. And so you think your kids want to continue the same routine when they may not. They may be craving the affection and time with their father, the other parent, and you're just not realizing that, right? Because you've been having to manage and control and take care of everything. You think that's the way it's supposed to stay. So you will have a lot of perspective shifts when you're studying this material, but it will help you get through it, right? So you won't just, it won't just be piled on you and then all of a sudden, you know, you're stressed out because you don't know what to do with it. It will actually help transform you, and you will start to understand better what you need to do to help your children and what your children are feeling, and how to make those connections in a way that doesn't push them away or drive them away. So we help you focus on what will be most productive, right? Most parents don't find us until after their child is taken and they're devastated and broken. Their health is suffering. They're depressed and desperate, and they've been taken advantage of by every expert and attorney the court thought they could afford and squeeze every penny out of them. So they came to us when they couldn't afford an attorney anymore. They wanted the ex punished. They wanted their child back. A lot of you will say, how can I sue my ex? How can I sue my ex? And we do have some information up there on that. But we always tell you, focus first. Remember, you're the buckets of water. You've got to come in, put out the fires, and get your life straight, get you straight, reclaim your parental authority and identity. And then you can see if you still are interested in doing that, if you want to focus on that. Some people don't want any more to do with litigation. Some people find that it's, you know, something that they need to do because maybe they've permanently lost their children through the parental alienation. So some of you haven't seen your children for several years. When you get into the courses, once you get into these courses and you realize the rights that weren't protected, and you go through shock again, right? Shock and anger at the attorney who didn't protect you. So some of you will say, I want to sue my attorney too. Same response I just gave you a little while ago. Get yourself right, get your situation situated, or however you need to do with your life, using our plans and systems and education. And then again, you can decide what's right for you and what other options you may or may not want to take. But the point is, by following our system, you will have options, you will have choices. Again, right now, you may not feel like you have any. So we're going to help you focus on what will be most productive at the time, right? It's extremely rare that any parent, after losing their child in the first round, get their child back just doing it the traditional way. That has been done for at least the last 2 generations. But you go back to modify with the belief that if you just prove somehow judge made a mistake choosing the other parent, you think the judge is going to be more persuaded because of all the things you changed, your house, your job, and maybe even got married. You think the judge is going to see you as more stable now that you've changed all the things the judge wrote he didn't like in your order. You think you're going to get your child back, and then you get disappointed again. So again, you spend money with the experts to get the judge to like you, and the cycle starts all over again. It's a mad, vicious cycle. You believe you have to be liked to have your child again, so you're going to spend more money to validate who you are as a person, as a parent, and that's what you did the first time. But you do it again because you don't know of a better way. We get positioned into that victim state, and we're no longer the expert of our own children, the expert of our own lives. Our lives are being taken over by outside sources. And somebody here knows, they said this. This is a quote. I'm sorry, I should have started off as the quote. But so one of the moms that has been following our materials and our education for at least 5 years now said, we get positioned into the victim state. We're no longer the expert of our own children. We no longer are the expert of our own lives. Our lives are being taken over by outside sources we have no control over. So very true. That's stated by Monica Shimonik. And where did she start her journey? She started a lot of her journey with us a long time ago. She was doing some research before that, but I think her journey really turned around when she found our stuff. And now that she's been able to build her life back up, she has 2 beautiful additional children and a husband, and she's the founder of Moms Unshackled. So what you have been doing hasn't been working for you, and you've decided that, quote, that victim identity is no longer serving you. The system that we have developed will help you fight to take back your identity and be that strong parent. You can be that parent, just like Monica, who says that victim identity is no longer serving me, and I'm now going to take back my identity and be a strong parent. I'm making my position known. I'm repositioning myself as a strong parent in my own life. I am the expert of my own life. I am the expert of my children's lives. She can help you build up that courage to use our system if you're not quite there yet. But if you are already there and you've made these realizations and you just need the education and the plan now, then welcome. Some moms and some dads have to leave their spouse because they're suffering, and we went over that. And so we're going to help you no matter where you're at in the process to follow the system and plans that we have developed, where you get to decide the recipe that works for you, where you get to learn to adapt to fit your needs and have a more effective result. Understanding what is happening and understanding the family court process puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in the right mindset needed for standing up for your rights in the family court. Our system helps you fight more effectively for your children. If you're being treated like a second-class citizen or you want to prevent it and don't want to become one of those 22 million parents being erased and alienated from their true identity and from their children's lives, you're in the right place. If you've already been made non-primary, excuse me, or are joint, but it only means joint on paper, and you're still being abused by the other parent and the orders are making it worse, you've joined the over 22 million adults who are oppressed. And every oppressed people have needed a plan, a system, and an education for things to change. Thomas Paine educated the masses with one little pamphlet. People learned how to impeach the king and remove him from being the decision maker in their lives. They used education, and then they created the Declaration of Independence to do it. And that's what we provide for you. So what's in our system? Figuring out your ingredients and what recipes are available to you. Courses that teach you how to organize, make sense of the confusion, calm the chaos, use your rights to restore your parental identity, parental authority, your right to be your own expert. Webinars that give you plans and steps, workbooks and guides that help you teach your attorney and teach others to do the same for themselves. Part of our system is teaching you how to organize your case so you can continue to live the life of your choosing. You will learn how to manage both. The skills you learn in our system, you can carry into other areas of your life as well. Your business, your practice, like if you're a counselor, lawyer, psychologist, your everyday family life. The other part of our system, excuse me, is learning that you have rights and how they work. How you protect that you get to choose what kind of relationships you want to have with the other parent, not the judge. How you protect your choices not to co-parent, but to parallel parent. How to protect that you get to choose what is best for your child, not a gal, not a counselor, not the judge. And did you get to choose how you spend your money, not be forced to give it away to the other parent, to other experts, not of your choosing. Then you also learn how to manage power and abuse of power. You learn strategies and plans that are designed to help you stop being abused, learn how to craft orders that are livable, how to maximize your use of mediation, overcome objections, what works, what doesn't work, appeal arguments, and more. Our courses teach you how to be effective and accomplish your goals so you can live free and live your dreams again. You'll realize that you're the expert of your life and your case. You choose what kind of relationship you want or don't want to have with the other parent. You choose how you want to raise your child. You choose how you spend your money. Your parental identity will be restored and you can be you and not fear the punishments for it. This journey starts with all of you, the individual who's going through this right now. The success of all of this starts with you. One of our students said that as soon as she learned how the family court business model worked, she immediately started to heal. She stopped dumping thousands of dollars into the system and became her own expert. You guessed it, that was Monica. This all started with our system. She was able to stand up to the courtroom bullies, become healthier, and fight more effectively once she learned about the rights that she had and had the right tools to use them. Once she learned that it was okay to be herself and that they were wrong, not her, she was able to take that first step. So all of the ladies that I've mentioned and the fathers that I've mentioned in these examples learned that they are their own expert. And they all learned that they didn't have to be liked and spend all this money to be heard in court. We hope that you will be the next parent to become the next expert to take these steps. So click below. I'm going to put the link at the end of this live to start empowering yourself and learn how to use your rights today. You'll see the first step on there down below or above the live. I'll probably add it in the, I'll add it to the where the title is. Click there if you want to learn how to restore your parental identity while you learn how to navigate family law pro se like a pro. So whether you're a parent just wanting to be more effective or an advocate who's helping other parents and want to keep your message uniform, this is where you want to start. Thanks for joining me, and I'm going to look just real quick because we've been out of time a long time ago just to see what you guys have commented or if you have questions here. Yeah, and somebody mentioned that sometimes when you go get a trial dates, they're 9 to 12 months out. So if you're paying a lot of money to maintain 2 households, that can be pretty devastating and drive you into bankruptcy right there. So you're going to have to know how to get through this process quickly. We have steps for doing that as well. Yeah, and somebody confirmed that their son's teenage boys and stepchildren became targets in this process. It's really sad. I mean, you can your stepchildren's lives can be destroyed along with yours. Your parents, the grandparents' lives can be destroyed when they get falsely accused of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is one of those things that it's just, no matter how you look at it, it's a long process and it's devastating. Even when you're innocent, it's just devastating, and you have to spend a lot of money to defend. Sandy says she's been 3 years in appeal without a ruling. So as you can see, you guys, this information is valuable and it's needed for all of you to be able to start changing this process, right? This isn't going to change on its own. We know that. It's been going on for generations. If it changed just by being likable, I love this example, Monica. Monica's great for, it's brilliant with coming up with analogies and helping people connect, right? Connect these ideas. And one of them was that if all it took was all of us being liked, it'd be solved by now, right? Because we can all, fake it. Like she said, we've done it for job interviews. We've done it for other things in our life. And I'm going to have to go. So they're kicking us out of the room here. So thank you guys for joining us. And like I said, it's not about being liked. Don't let your attorney make you believe that. And click on the link above and let's get started. Let's get started right away on turning your situation around and letting you reclaim your authority in your life. Thanks. Bye.